Welcome to my YouTube channel, Laurel Artwork. I'm glad to have you joining me today. I'm going to be painting a portrait. I've had some requests from viewers asking me if I would paint a portrait, and I love doing that, and so I'm going to try to paint one for you today. A lot of people are afraid to tackle portraits because they're afraid of painting people. But in reality, if you use the method of getting the light and shadow pattern accurately, they really don't have to be any scarier than any other subject like a house or painting a vase of flowers. Flesh tones in watercolor are relatively easy to mix, and when they're applied cleanly, they can depict glowing skin like no other medium that I know of. But then again, I'm prejudiced when it comes to watercolor. But when they're not kept clean and radiant, they can look really muddy and dull, and that happens to me more often than I care to admit. I'd like to share with you some samples of color triads that can work when painting flesh tones. This is a little example from my book, Putting People in Your Paintings. And these are for lighter skin tones, which is the portrait that I'll be doing today. This the first one is cadmium red with yellow ochre and manganese blue. And oftentimes I won't mix the blue in until it comes to the shadow part. Another example is cadmium red with gamboge and manganese blue. And sometimes I will also use alizarin crimson as the red. But it's relatively the same method that I use in doing anything else. It's a triad of three primary colors. And it's the method that I use when painting skin tones. So I have got here my subject, which is my granddaughter Eliza. And one of my very favorite ways to light a subject when I'm painting people is to put them in backlight. The light is coming from behind the subject. And this can create some really gorgeous halo effects, especially in the hair, as you can see here, which is really the reason I chose this subject. And it drew me to wanting to paint it. And I'd like to show you how you can really exaggerate this effect in watercolor and end up with a portrait that has a really nice glow about it. So I'm going to start. I have my drawing on. I'm working on 140-pound cold press paper. It's Winsor Newton. And I have drawn this subject by hand on another piece of paper, and then I traced it onto my watercolor paper from that so that I didn't have too many erasure marks, just to keep it a little cleaner. And then I'll be working with the mixtures of triads as I mentioned. I'm going to start out with my smaller Low Cornell number 8 brush. And I'm going to, I'm actually going to begin, I think, putting the hair in first. And in this case, I'm going to be using a yellow ochre to start, and a little bit of raw sienna. It's got a little bit more of a brown to it. And then for my shadow, I put on my palette, and you can see this is a little bit out of place, but this is Winsor Violet, and I'm finding that it makes a really pretty shadow mixed with these yellows, and it seemed to work really well. So I'll be using those colors to start out in the hair, and then I will get to the triad later of the skin tones in her face. So I'm going to wet, in this case, my hair first, so that I don't want to get the hair too hard-edged and to the point where it doesn't look really natural. And then I just want it to bleed back into that white area. I'm going to take just a little clean water and run along there to let that flow back into the white. And then pulling that purple into the shadow area. My sleeves are getting in my paint. And while that mixture is wet, I want to start coming down into the face. And I'm going to also use a little bit of paper towel to pull out some of the strands of hair that are a little more in the light. I'll just kind of take that over my finger and run that in a couple places here, especially right there. There's kind of a nice light right there, and up and through here too. So it just gives the suggestion of the hair, but it's not delineating all of it, and it's keeping it soft. Now I'm going to move into the flesh tones and get those on here. And she's in this light. She's got a really rosy complexion. So I think I am going to start with cadmium red light, or actually that's cadmium red medium, and add cadmium yellow medium and cadmium orange. And I think a little bit of permanent alizarin. Okay. And I'm going to paint around a couple of those strands of hair, but I'm coming right up to the base of her hair. That's getting a little too orange. So bring in some more of the pink. And before this gets dry, I want to take out a little bit of that highlight on her nose and on her eye there. And again, right along here is lighter. I'm adding in just a little bit of the purple now. over on this side of her neck. That's going to be a little more purple. I don't want that to be too hard of an edge there. The ear will be any places on the body where an appendage sticks out is usually redder, like an ear or nose. And that's going to be a little bit more in shadow back here. And then that's the part of her face that's most pink, is right there through the cheeks. And then on the eye, she's going to have that little but I want that to be a soft shadow because it's a rounded form. I'm letting her eyelashes bleed just a little bit into her nose area. And her nostril is actually pretty red. And the deepest color on her lips is going to be right there where the shadow from the top lip comes above it. Okay, still needing to go back into her ear and get that. Okay, so I'm still going to work a little bit in this ear, get the deep shadow on the inner ear here. And I think I'm still needing a little bit of a darker shadow tone on her nose here. Okay, I'm pretty happy with that skin tone. It's really clean and it's glowing. Okay, I'm going to start working back into the hair now, wetting the areas that are not in the light. And I need to strengthen this quite a bit. Um, and right under that little part of her bun there, we've got a really nice dark there. And hair really does look better when it's blurred. So it is kind of a good idea to paint it in wet and wet. I don't want really too hard of an edge there, so I'll massage that out a little bit. And take a little of the edge off this as well. Again, I've got to And I'm painting over and behind and on top of so that I can get some nice variations in her hair. Maybe going to pull in a little bit of the transparent oxide red too. And just kind of gently losing that edge into the what's going to be the white space. I like that there's just this really almost a really radiant orange there, nearly. Gonna kind of exaggerate that a little bit. And then right behind here is kind of a little deep shadow of hair. And that's got a really nice little orangey halo around it too. So hair is really, can be really fun to paint if you don't get too caught up in trying to paint every hair, which is tempting to do. Okay, so I still feel like this has a little bit of a shadow through here. I don't want to overdo this, so I better stop. We can reevaluate later and see what else needs to be done. Okay. Still kind of seeing now that this needs to be a little darker down inside her ear. Okay, so now I am going to begin work around painting behind her hair. And I'm using my number 8, so I think I'm going to go to a little bit bigger brush. And I also think I'll clean the palette really quickly since I'm done with the flesh tones. I'm going to start using a dark triad to get that background in. And it's foliage pretty much behind her. So I will probably use a combination of ultramarine blue or indanthrine blue and permanent alizarin crimson, I guess. I want to come inside that white just a little bit, so when I paint over it, it's going to leave, the color's going to bleed into that white shape and leave a really nice little halo area. So I'm not painting all the way up to it. And I'll throw in a little bit of cadmium yellow to let us know that that is a green back there, even though it's very dark. But you can start to see that glow around her hair. get a little bit of that bright green. I am just not happy with my blue here. It's just not really giving me this oomph that I want. And part of this is still kind of a bright bush back there. I think the best bet on a background for a portrait is something very diffused and or abstract so that it doesn't detract too much from the figure. And so that's why I'm just letting these colors blend and flow. And they're really setting her off well. I'm just continuing down to the bottom now of this background, just melting color together. Which is fun to do. And then I'll put her arm in. I do need some more skin tone, I forgot. And I'll just let that kind of bleed off into the background. It's a little bit orange. But it does dry a lot lighter. So I'm just kind of trying to keep this little ruffle around her neck kind of abstract. I don't want to pull too much attention away from her face. Just giving a little indication of the lace pattern on her jumper. I don't really want to overdo that either. So hopefully that pattern is giving you a little sense of her dress having some dimension there. Okay, I left that a little bit abstract, hopefully. And there's a nice little shadow here at the neck edge of her dress. Now I want to work back into the darks around her hair. And you can kind of start to see that now taking a little better shape. The more I soften the edges on this area here, the more that gives the effect of that backlight. And then the same thing up here. Just trying to kind of add some more thin strands of hair out there and then let this wash back into the background. Okay. And then if I sort of tickle these edges, and blot them a little bit. Then they can really look like sunlight coming through there. And same thing up here. And then another thing that I will do is use a little bit of the gouache, the white gouache, and add some more little strings of hair that will and then I'm gonna kind of just massage this edge too of white. That color lifted really well. Okay, and then over here I have got this a little bit too much of the halo there, so I'll add a little bit more dark there. Okay, I can see I want just a little bit of a deeper green right around the border of her nose. That's yeah, so I can see that highlight there. A little better. Okay, now I am gonna work a little bit on the hair with a little bit more of the white strands out there. Well, actually, first I'm going to go over the background with the wash of manganese blue, just to push it back a little bit more. Just a really light wash. And it's just going to kind of smooth everything out. also kind of want to soften the edges in here too. Hair doesn't really have too much soft edge to it. I mean hard edge. What am I saying? So I'm just kind of smoothing that all together. Okay, now once that's dry, I can come in and do a little bit of stuff with some white. Okay, I'm feeling like this red thing that she's got on is, I don't know, a little too busy. I just need to tone that down a little bit, I think. And I can live with that a little better. that out, and now I'm putting it back in. Okay. I'm going to take a little rigger brush and get into the, now that this is dry up in here, going back into the hair, just adding a little bit more of those individual strands that are lit up in the sun. So that's probably enough on that. And then maybe just a little. And then I need to indicate, I think, that I'd like to soften this edge of her neck as well, so that you can tell that light is kind of eating away her neck there. And this paper, I've said a lot of times before, is just so good at letting you lift out. That's one of its really best qualities. Um, Recapture just a little bit of that shoulder lighting. And I think blur this just a little bit. And I think I'm going to darken these sleeves too. They seem to look a little bit pale or something. I don't know. Now what I'm unhappy with is the line under her chin there. I don't know how I managed to do that, but I think that's better. I am really feeling like her skin tone needs to go down a value or two. And I don't really want to do it, but it's kind of looking like it needs it. So, okay, you've seen it at this stage, so if I wreck it now, you'll know it was once pretty. Should I or shouldn't I, guys? I like what I've got here, but I'm feeling like I do need to strengthen the flesh tones through the shadow side of her face. And I think it's going to read a little better if I do that. It's going to be scary, but it's telling me it's got to be done. So I'm going to just wet her face. All over. And then what I need is a really nice rosy and then it's also going to need it over here too. When the painting talks to you, you kind of have to listen. And it was right. That value needed to go down. That's better now. That shadow is better behind her nose, and Deepen that just a little bit there. That needed to be scumbled up a little bit. Okay, I think I can live with this now. That face did have to go down a value, and that's much better. Anyway, portraits are really a lot of fun. They can be a little bit of pressure, especially if you're trying to get a likeness of somebody, but I think it's just fun to paint people and not worry if they look like the person, if they have a nice light and, I don't know, a glow about them. I think that's as much as we need to capture. I wanted to just conclude with reading a little quote that a person wrote about painting portraits. He said, "There's the sense of creating something from nothing, that an arrangement of essentially colored mud on cloth, or in our case paper, can evoke a human reaction, a sort of magic trick. We don't see colored shapes on a flat surface. We see a fellow human. We feel their presence, we sense their story, we have a reaction to them, and we feel the artist's presence too." That is by Clive Bryant, and I love those words, and I feel very strongly, just as he does, about painting figures and painting portraits. I hope you'll give it a try. I hope you've enjoyed this session today. Thank you for staying with me, and best of luck in your watercolor pursuits. I will catch you next time. Thank you.